My Hero Academia Chapter 382 is finally out, and with it comes the continuation of the hero's desperate assault on All for One, as well as an absolutely shocking twist I don't think any of us saw coming. No, seriously, this one literally comes out of nowhere. And so, without further ado, let's jump right into My Hero Academia Chapter 382, titled, I Won't Let You Get Away. This chapter opens up exactly where the last chapter left off, with All for One being pummeled into the ground by the massive dark monstrosity that is Tokoyami and Dark Shadow. During this attack, both Hawks and All for One think about how this fight hasn't actually gotten as bad for the heroes and as good for the villains as it could have gone. But speak of the devil and he shall appear, as immediately after thinking this, Himiko Toga performs the one action that can indefinitely change the tidings of this war. She starts to make clones of Dabi, Shigaraki, and even All for One himself. Oh yeah, I completely forgot Twice could do that. Upon being brought into this world, the Shigaraki clone immediately places his hand on the ground and attempts to use Decay. But in a more surprising twist, nothing happens, and the clone quickly gets taken out. In seeing this clone's failure to activate its quirk, Froppy, who is now charging into battle alongside Jiro and Uraraka, notes that if Toga was able to make fully functioning clones of the League members, she would have made them at the very beginning of this war, and this whole fight would already be over. So there must be some condition holding her back from making fully functioning clones of other people. Froppy then surmises that based on what Toga told Ochako in the last war about her only being able to copy the quirks of people she loves, this caveat must carry over to her Twice clones, meaning that she doesn't love the League members enough to use their quirks. Basically, while Twice could make the clones use their quirks, Toga can't, which kind of makes sense but also kind of doesn't. I mean, Toga copied Twice's ability, and Twice's ability should allow her to make perfect copies of other people. So the limitation of her own ability being applied to someone else's quirk seems a bit strange, but it also doesn't because it is her limitation. It's definitely in the gray area where you just gotta be like, yeah, I guess that makes sense. But anyways, following Toga's failure, Ochako begins to worry about the villain, wondering how she must be feeling about being unable to use her friend's quirks, which ultimately means she doesn't love them enough to help them. And as the story cuts to Toga, we clearly see she most certainly doesn't feel great about this development, as she tears up admitting that she does in fact love both Toya and Tomura, but she just can't use their powers. Toga also admits that she tried using their powers before this war to no avail, but she had hoped that with her heightened emotions because of the war, that she finally would have been able to use them. Toga then begins to cry, as she thinks about how Jin would have been able to make the perfect clones, and she begins to wonder why she can't fully become him. It's also interesting to note that as Toga thinks this, we see a double spread of her surrounded by darkness as the voices of all her Twice clones continue to chant, "Exterminate all the heroes." However, in a quick flash, all this chanting stops as Uraraka swiftly rockets onto the scene, fighting off the Twice clones, causing a bunch of them to float. Ochako then makes eye contact with Toga, who is still in her Twice body crying, and thinks to herself, I always love seeing people happy. That's why I can't ignore your tears. Now, what's interesting about this scene in particular, besides the transition from darkness into light upon Ochako's arrival, symbolizing the light of hope Uraraka brings and wants to bring to Toga, is the fact that Ochako's movements here are very similar to Toga's movements when she copied Ochako during the MLA arc, which was the first time she activated another person's quirk. This not only nods to the fact that both Ochako and Toga are far more similar than we realize, but it also could be hinting at the fact that maybe Toga doesn't need to make copies of her friends, but rather her enemies. We know Toga can use Uraraka's quirk, so what's to stop her from making Ochako clones to attack the heroes? All they would need to do is make contact with the heroes and poof, they would float away. And to make it all the more ironic, this technically would also be a way that Ochako could help and cheer up Toga. But I guess we'll have to wait until the next chapter to find out, as the story cuts back on over to Tokoyami and All for One, where we see Hawks beside Tokoyami egging on his pupil to hold on to All for One as long as he can, as it won't be long now before the villain's body is fully gone. In order to help Tokoyami, Kami creates an illusion of darkness in the sky to further black out the sun, and Inasa continues to support Dark Shadow with torrents of wind. Unfortunately, despite the hero's best efforts and this absolute monstrous combination of attacks, All for One still somehow proves too strong for the heroes, unleashing a massive explosion that knocks Dark Shadow and all the other heroes away. However, the hero's attacks weren't in vain, as when the dust clears and we see All for One again, he lets us know that it's the strong quirks like Inasa's and Tokoyami's that have always been the toughest to deal with. And we see that All for One has been reverted back to his far younger, seemingly teenage version of himself. Oh, you know the fans are gonna go wild for this guy. Despite his younger appearance, All for One seems to maintain his threatening aura, sparking a bit of fear in Tokoyami. All for One then looks to the side and, upon seeing something, begins to fly away from the heroes once more. In their continuous attempts to slow down the villain, both Tokoyami and Inasa begin to chase down and battle All for One, who has begun to repel the heroes using his rivet stabs. Although fate doesn't seem to be on the hero's side, as it's revealed whatever All for One was looking at wasn't a thing, but a person. And not just any person, but Gigantomachia himself, who we see barreling his way to All for One and the heroes. That's right, Gigantomachia has entered the fight at long last. The heroes are so screwed, and All for One couldn't be happier, as he calls out to Giganto to destroy all the remaining heroes. Though not all is as it seems, as in seeing Gigantomachia, Hawks immediately calls Sukuuchi and asks, "This situation is actually better than it seems, right?" And it is this moment that we see Gigantomachia pick up and throw an entire mountain at All for One. Obviously taken aback by this, All for One attempts to block this attack, and in doing so, he notices that Machia isn't alone. There are multiple figures on his head, one of which is revealed to be none other than the battered and bloodied, manliest man there is, Eijiro Kirishima, who calls out, "We're here too, Tokoyami. We won't let him get to Midoriya." And alongside him, explaining how all of this is happening, is the former general studies student turned hero, Hitoshi Shinzo, wearing his Persona Chords hero gadget. That's right, it looks like Shinzo has brainwashed Gigantomachia. Holy crap! And that's it for chapter 382. Let me know what you thought of this chapter. If you liked this video, don't forget to leave a like. For more My Hero content, subscribe to the Lunchtime crew. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Plus Ultra.